Hello, my friends, and welcome to Perfect Practice. I am super excited for our conversation today that I'm going to be having with our dear guest, Dr. Debi Silber. We're going to be talking about something that may be impacting you. I almost guarantee it's impacting you. It may be impacting the people that you work with, and I could almost guarantee that it's impacting the clients that you're serving in your practice. Today, we're going to have a conversation that will not only be about business, but will be about our emotional health and our integrity, and something that I know is impacting someone that you love and care about if it doesn't impact you directly. And that's something called betrayal. Betrayal is something that we are dealing with on a constant basis because it's something that likely happened to us many years ago and is currently impacting the way we operate. It might be impacting our nervous system. It might be impacting our relationships. It might be impacting the dreams and aspirations that we're reaching for. And certainly it's going to impact our self worth. So, without further ado, I love to welcome somebody who I've known for many years, somebody who has blown my mind from the stage when she talks about this topic, and somebody who also has developed a very successful business following her passion and following her mission, speaking to people about betrayal and the trauma that it causes, the impact that it causes, and the breakthroughs that can come as a result of this. So thank you, Debi. I appreciate you being here. I know how busy you are, and I know how important this work is to you. So I am so honored to invite you to our community and share this with people.
Looking forward to our conversation, my friend.
All right. Well, let's jump right in. You've got quite a amazing background. You've been in business for 32 years. You shared with me before we turned the recording on some amazing breakthroughs that are happening in your business at the current moment. So where I'd like to go is back to the beginning, because it's never easy, right? And most businesses don't make it past the first year. You've made it 32 years. So there's certainly a formula of success that I'd like to dissect and study and share with our listeners today. So let's go back in time. Let's go back to, let's say, 32 years ago. What was the impetus that wanted you to made you want to be an entrepreneur in the first place?
I think so much of it is following your gut and really listening to your intuition. I remember graduating from college, I had a double major and it was TV production, broadcast journalism. So I thought I was going in that sort of down that production track, but it wasn't rewarding or fulfilling for me. And I realized that's what I was really missing. And believe it or not, here I was on a vacation. I was on a hike one day and I'm walking around, I'm walking on this hike, and the trainer is just showing us the most beautiful sights. And we're on this hike, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is what she gets to do. This is health. I like this. So I couldn't really justify 10 years worth of student loans in TV and putting it aside to just jump and go for health now. But that's what was really calling to me. And eventually I did. I just bailed on the whole TV thing, jumped over to health, became MSRD, holistic dietitian, master's in nutrition. And then from there became a personal trainer because I had to support myself. That business took off. And then I realized I was eating well, I was exercising, and I was so sick. So I'm thinking to myself, how could this be? I should be the picture of health. And I was anything but.
Hmm.
And it turned out that it was the toxic relationships, the stress, the overwhelm. And so I had surgery. And while I was studying, many people would like put photo albums together or whatever. I studied to become a whole health coach, a health expert trained to teach how your lifestyle creates health or disease. And I learned that on some level, the thoughts I was thinking, the stress I was under, the relationships I had were at the root of it all. So I actually cut the ties and healed from all of it. That was the beginning of this new health journey. And then years later, my own traumas in betrayal led me to the PhD program and the studies and the discoveries and where I am now.
Wow. So you've got like a pretty impressive bio. And you founded the Post Betrayal Transformation Institute. you're a holistic psychologist. You have a health mindset and personal development, aspect to what you do. You're a two-time best-selling author. You've got your own podcast, which is ranked in the top 1.5% of all podcasts. You've been on TEDx. You've been on Dr. Oz. Like, wow, so impressive, so amazing. You're always so humble. And I can't even imagine you unwell, because for as long as I've known you, you've been the picture of health. And so it tells me that obviously transformation is possible. But what was really interesting about what you said is that it was really the toxic relationships that was holding you back. And I see this over and over again. What would you say if you were talking to somebody? What are some of the signs that somebody is in a toxic relationship? Maybe we can start there to unpack that for people.
Yeah. It's when you start questioning and doubting yourself, when you're just you stop believing in yourself and you figure that someone else knows better than you. When you don't realize your value and your worth. And what happens is, and I see this very often, it starts with an early betrayal. And it could be intentional or even unintentional. And it could be something as simple as this. Let's say there's a 10-year-old boy, and he has some earth-shattering news to share with mom. And he runs into the kitchen, and mom's on the phone. So she shushes him. Shh. Right there at that very moment, he could have made that mean, I don't matter. So think about it. What we feed grows. And we want to look for confirming evidence to support that belief. So if that's the belief that his mom just reacted in that way, completely unintentionally hurting him, right? And then he believes I don't matter. Think about the choices he'd make, along the way, the people he would date, the work he would do because of something as simple as that doesn't get looked at.
Yeah. And, a lot of times when we think of betrayal, like with a capital B, we think it has to be something huge or big and blatantly obvious. So people might be listening, like, I've never been betrayed, but it's not about, it's about what our kind of body and emotion and our subconscious feels as well, right? It's not just about what we might be thinking about logically. And as adults, we might even think like, oh, like, what's the big deal? Right. But to our little version of ourselves, there's a part of us that never really grows up, and it could show up in our lives. So specifically for entrepreneurs and in businesses, because a lot of people listening to this are health practitioners or coaches, how might that show up in their business?
Yeah, I will tell you exactly. I can share the symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome, which that was the second of the 3 discoveries. Happy to share that. But we see betrayal showing up in health, in work, in relationships. So for example, in relationships, I'll see it in one of 2 ways. The first is a repeat betrayal. The face has changed, but it's the same thing. And people go from boss to boss to boss, friend to friend to friend, partner to partner to partner. And they say, is it me? Yes, it is. Not in that it's your fault, in that it's your opportunity. There's a profound lesson waiting to be learned. You are lovable, worthy, and deserving. You need better boundaries in place, whatever it is. Until and unless you get that, you're going to have opportunities in the form of people to teach you. So a repeat betrayal means it is unhealed. The second way we see it in relationships is the big wall goes up and we keep everyone at a distance. Been there, done that. No one's getting near me again. We think it's coming from a place of strength. It's not. It's coming from fear. We were so brokenhearted and our trust and heart was so shattered, we would rather keep everyone at bay than risk that level of vulnerability and have to feel that pain again. That's an unhealed betrayal. In work, though, we'll see it in a few ways too. You want that raise or promotion, you deserve it, but your confidence was shattered. So you don't have the confidence to ask, and you may be bitter and resentful instead. Or you want to be that team player, that collaborative partner, but the person you trusted the most proved untrustworthy. How do you trust that boss, that coworker, that partner? And in health, we see it in so many ways. We see people going to the most well-meaning, amazing doctors, coaches, healers, therapists to manage a stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. And at the root of it is this unhealed betrayal.
Hmm. Speaking of betrayal, what goes right along with that is forgiveness. And you founded National Forgiveness Day, which for everyone is September 1st. What's a way, that if we're holding on to something and maybe we can think of someone that we need to forgive. I mean, they say when you're holding on to resentment towards somebody else, it's like holding a hot piece of coal in your own hand. Like you're the one that's getting burned, right? Your nervous system might be getting fried, or you might just be having thoughts that you shouldn't be having instead of positive thoughts that you could be having, and using your brain and your body for something else, right? Instead of holding on to something that isn't serving you. So what are maybe a few ways that if we wanted to show our forgiveness to somebody, do you have some strategies for that, or some best practices?
Yeah, I do. But what I would like to say is when forgiveness, when you're working on forgiveness, but it's for the wrong reasons, like you just want the pain to be over with already. You just want things to go back to the way they were, which never exists. It backfires every time. So what I would recommend is move towards acceptance first. It's an easier reach than forgiveness. But just to show you the power of forgiveness, because you're right, the withholding forgiveness is something that is only hurting us. But we feel, in the betrayed community, what happens is we feel the rug has been pulled out of us. We barely have any control over our own lives because we never saw this coming. So granting or withholding forgiveness, we feel is something within our control. So you could see why we're hesitant just to give that back. But to tell you the power of forgiveness, we have, she's in her mid 80s, someone in our community. And we did to launch, because this past September 1st was our first National Forgiveness Day. And so I had this 21-day journey. And she had a betrayal 70 plus years old. This was from her family, 70 plus years. And she had digestive issues, which is completely common. 45% of everyone betrayed has a digestive issue: Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, you name it.
Wow.
And I'll read the stats after. I would love to share them with you. 2 weeks into our forgiveness journey, 21-day forgiveness journey, she completely healed from a 70 plus year digestive issue. That's the power.
Isn't it fascinating that there's so many ways for us to heal? And, I would imagine that many people are climbing up the supplement tree, or climbing up the next diet tree, or climbing up the next exercise routine tree, and not finding answers. And it could be something that, I don't want to say simple. Certainly it can be very challenging for people to experience these things and go through the process of forgiveness, but something so outside of the realm of our normal thinking.
Yeah. Well, think about it. When you think of what the gut does, it absorbs, digests, and processes food. Well, isn't a betrayal difficult to absorb, digest, and process? Is it any wonder we're struggling with the gut? I'd love to share the stats, though, if you want to hear them.
Absolutely.
Okay, because that would be really awkward if you said no. Okay. So we've had, 95,000 plus people take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz. Men, women, just about every country's represented. I'd love you to pay attention to these numbers so you see just how high they are. Out of all of them, 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hypervigilant. Think about what that does to your nervous system. 94% deal with painful triggers. Here are the most common physical symptoms. 71% have low energy. 68% have sleep issues. 63% have extreme fatigue. Your adrenals have totally tanked. 47% have weight changes. So in the beginning, maybe they can't hold food down. Later on, they're using food for comfort. 45% have digestive issues, which I mentioned. The most common mental symptoms: 78% are overwhelmed. 70% are walking around in a state of disbelief. 64% are in shock. 62% can't concentrate. So let's just stop there. You can't concentrate. You have a gut issue. You're exhausted. You still have to raise your kids. You still have to work. That's not even emotionally. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. And we bounce back and forth between those two all day long. Think about what your nervous system is doing when that's happening. 82% are hurt. 79% are stressed. Just a few more. This one killed me. 84% have an inability to trust. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how.
Wow. That's those are some very staggering numbers. Yeah. And I guess, like, from your experience, what if somebody doesn't find you and the work that you're doing, where are they going to alleviate these symptoms? Are they turning to medication, supplements, like inflicting pain on themselves? Like what are alcohol? Like what are these people turning to deal with these things?
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what they're doing. And first of all, just to wrap up those statistics, those numbers are super high. They're also not necessarily from a recent betrayal. This could be from the parent who did something awful when you were a kid. This could be from the girlfriend or boyfriend who broke your heart in high school. So think of this. That person may not know, care, remember. They may not even be alive. And here we are today with these symptoms from something unhealed from all those years ago. The good news is you can heal from all of it, which is the third discovery, which I'd love to share. But to answer your question, what people typically do is, number one, they'll go to therapy. And we have so many people coming into the PBT Institute with therapy trauma. And here's why. It could be the most well-meaning therapist, but if all you're doing is unpacking and unpacking and unpacking, you will leave that appointment feeling heard, but that's it. And what happens is, yes, you feel heard. You're also re-traumatizing yourself. You're also putting the stake in the ground, like where it's just that much harder to leave that space. You're solidifying your story. You're making it who you are. So we see that all the time. So people will go to therapy and they wonder, oh my gosh, why is it that I've been in therapy 5 years and I'm still the same? Or I have repeat betrayals. It's because you're stuck in one of the most common places we get stuck, which I'll talk about in the third discovery. The second thing they do is they numb, avoid, and distract. They'll take, they'll use food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, anything to numb, avoid, and distract themselves from this painful place. So while it may make the day a bit easier to get through, not without a price. We have a saying within PBT, and it's face it, feel it, heal it. And that's the only way you're going to move through it. You can't move through it if you're just numbing or coasting. You just can't. The third thing people do is very often they'll join that lame support group and they have their people. Now think of this. What we see so often is it's like the In It Awful Club and everyone's complaining and commiserating. Now think about what happens. You start to heal. You will actually sabotage your healing because you don't want to outgrow your people. Right. So when we're numbing, when we're hanging on to our story, through other people helping us doing just that, or when we're in those types of support groups, it is like crazy glue keeping you stuck in one spot, preventing you from moving through the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough.
I love the analogies that you're using when you say crazy glue. That I could really visualize that. Like, when we were young, we had that liquid glue, right? And it was the tip of it was
Elmer's?
like that Elmer's, yeah, and it was like all rubbery and it would be all sticky.
Glue, yep.
Yeah. So I could like really visualize that, people just being stuck there. And I'm sure this happens in all kinds of groups, right? Not even just betrayal groups or support groups, but this could even happen in mentorships where people are afraid to outgrow their peers and they self-sabotage and they kind of come back down. So it's quite interesting what you're sharing. The one thing I'd love to know is, what's the third discovery that you guys made?
Yeah, this for me was the most exciting. And what we found was, while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many people do, if we're going to fully heal, and by fully heal, I mean those symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome that I just shared, to this completely rebuilt space, That was the first discovery, called post-betrayal transformation. We're going to move through 5 proven predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every stage. And we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. Healing is entirely predictable. And happy to share the stages if you want to hear them.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. If you could walk us through them, that'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
sure. So stage 1 is before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, what I saw with everybody, me too, was a heavy lean on the physical and the mental thinking and doing. We're so good at that, and kind of neglecting or ignoring the emotional and the spiritual feeling and being. Well, if the table only has 2 legs, it's easy for that table to topple over, and that's us. Stage 2, shock, trauma, D-Day, discovery day. It's the scariest by far of all of the stages. And it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. Right here, you've gotten the news. It's like someone just took a mask off and reveals to you who they've been all this time. And you ignite the stress response. You're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete and total state of chaos and overwhelm. You can't wrap your mind around what you just learned. This makes no sense. And your worldview has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model, the rules that govern you, that prevent chaos. Trust this person. Don't go there. These are the rules. And in this one earth-shattering moment or series of moments, everything you've ever held to be real and true is no longer. The bottom has bottomed out on you, and a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. This is traumatizing. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You grab hold of anything or anyone in order to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. This is the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this? Where do I go? Who can I trust? Here's the trap though. Stage 3 by far is the most common place we get stuck. And here's why. Once we've figured out how to survive our experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where we just came from, we think it's good. And because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't know there's a stage 4 or stage 5, we plant roots here. We park here. We're not supposed to, but we don't know that. And 4 things start to happen. The first thing is you start getting all those small self-benefits, secondary gain. You get to be right. We like being right. You get your story. You don't have to do the hard work of learning to trust again. You get sympathy from everyone you tell your story to. And on some level, that feels good. So you plant deeper roots. Now, because this is where you are and you're here longer than you should be, the mind starts doing things like, maybe you're not that great. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. So you plant deeper roots. And now, because these are the thoughts you're thinking, this is the energy you put out. Like energy attracts like energy. So now you start attracting people and circumstances and even relationships towards you to confirm this is where you belong. Right here is where you're going to join that group. Right here is where you're not going to trust that you can heal. So you will sabotage yourself so you don't outgrow your betrayer. It gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but we don't know there's anywhere else to go, right here is where we start numbing, medicating, distracting, right? We start using food, drugs, alcohol, whatever. So think about it. You do it for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years later and say, that emotional eating you're doing, or that drinking, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they would look at me like I'm crazy. They would say it happened 20 years ago. All they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stay here. And here's where I'm sure all of your clients and patients are coming in to see you, because here's where now what they're spending their energy and attention on is medicating, numbing, and suppressing from the symptoms that are showing up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So if you're willing, willingness is a big word right here. If you're willing to let go of your story, the benefits you're receiving, grieve, mourn the loss, a bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Just in that decision, you're turning down the stress response. You're not
Mm.
healing just yet, but at least you stopped the massive damage you'd been accumulating in stages 2 and stage 3. Stage 4 feels like if you've ever moved. If you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, all your stuff's not there. It's not cozy yet, but you're like, yeah, we got this. We could do this. But think about it. If you were to move, you don't take everything with you. You don't take the things that don't represent who you're ready to become. And what I saw was there's this one space moving from stage 3 to stage 4. If your friends weren't there for you, you've outgrown them right here. That lame support group, you're done. That betrayer who isn't changing, you're done. When you've settled into this new space, you've made it cozy, you've made it mentally home, you move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. You didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now you do. Your mind is healing. You're making all kinds of new rules, new boundaries, and you have a new worldview based on everything you've been through. And the 4 legs of the table, in the beginning, it was all about physical and mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Man, so well thought out. And I can totally see how in my life I've gone through some of those stages in different areas of my life. And yeah, it actually literally follows those steps. And for me, a big shift in my life took place when I physically moved from Cincinnati to Toronto. Because I know in our interview we had many years ago, I was working for a company that owed me a bunch of money and never paid me. And it changed my worldview because I'm like, am I not worth it? Do I deserve this in some way? Like, what's going on over here? And moving was a huge catalyst in really shifting my my business and my self view, because it kind of gave me a new point to start from. And I can only imagine how many people that I've coached over the years have faced struggles and challenges that could probably be traced back to betrayal. Not charging what they're worth, not going in for and making the offer, right? Maybe not having the courage to put themselves out there, or not being willing to commit in longer term relationships with their clients, right? And so it's, to me, it's just like as you're speaking, I'm going through, I'm having this like process going on inside my head where I'm tracing back, like, man, I wonder some of the things I've said to my son, if those are going to show up in some ways, betrayal. I'm thinking of like ways I've been betrayed and the stages that I've gone through. And I'm thinking of some of my clients that, just for whatever reason, they can't get their, take that next step. And I'm wondering how much betrayal is playing a role in that. So I have a question, because I feel like you're speaking directly to me as you're sharing these things. So this will be selfish, but I think it's not selfish. I think it'll help everyone who's listening to this who might be thinking the same thing. So as soon as my son comes home, he might even be home right now, but as soon as I see him, I want to have a conversation with him. So I'd love for you to perhaps guide me through what that conversation might look like, or how I might break the ice with him, to have, like, really a serious and meaningful conversation with a 13-year-old, and just ask him, if there has been a time where I have maybe shushed him, and maybe not in that exact format, but if I've made him feel less than what he's worth, or made him feel like he was unheard or unseen. And I can actually think of a time this past weekend when I was in St. Kitts, and my son was really struggling on the paddleboard because it was super windy and the water was choppy. And he got really upset, and he kind of lashed out at me, even though it wasn't my fault. But then I lashed back at him, right? And I could see how I could have probably responded with a little bit more empathy for him in that moment. So I'm thinking, like, what would be helpful for me and perhaps our listeners is how we initiate that conversation. If not just if we feel betrayed, right? I think that's a whole different process. But if we feel like we've potentially betrayed somebody else, and we want to regain their trust, and don't want them to carry that burden into adulthood, let's say.
Sure. Well, I have 4 kids. They're in their 20s now, but when my betrayal happened, they were in their teens. And it was the biggest wake up call for all of us. We are all of us so close now. It's like we've all been through war together. But I remember when this all happened, well, first of all, I remember saying, listen, I'm not going to be my best. I love you with every fiber of my being, but let me know how I'm falling short, because I'm giving you absolutely the best I can at this time.
Hmm.
And they were team mom. I mean, they were totally with me. But I've just found in all of this, nothing beats honesty ever. And there's just even something as simple as, I don't know what the heck to say to you, but I want to make sure I don't screw you up. So let me know if there's anything I'm saying that makes you feel upset or sad or angry, because my intention is only to love you and teach you, is never to hurt you. But that doesn't mean I get the words right. So let's have a symbol or a saying or something where I know what my intentions are, but it may not be received that way. So let's have an honest communication about when I fall short in those ways. I just think when in doubt, honesty wins every single time.
Yeah, that I think everyone should play that back and listen to that. And, they don't have to say it word for word, say it in a way that feels right and comfortable for them. Look your kids or your spouse or your team members in the eye, whatever is the case. Look yourself perhaps in the eye. Sometimes there might even be self betrayal. I'd love to unpack that with you as well. But I think that's a really powerful statement and conversation starter that can truly transform lives and relationships. So thank you for sharing that.
I would even add to it, we have a program for the betrayer. Now you can imagine it's not just the betrayer who's sort of onto the next. This is the person who realizes they just shattered the heart and trust of the very person that loves them the most, that they love the most. And I work with them also, in addition to our coaches. And I even recommend to them, it's not supposed to flow out of you in this beautiful way. That actually is not a way to build trust. Your honesty is supposed to be awkward. You are supposed to be tripping over your words, because that's showing that person you're not that smooth at this, because it's unfamiliar. And it's okay. You're learning something new because that person is worth it. So instead of trying to get the words right, just tap into your heart. And what I see so often is conversations go wrong when we go from our head trying to reach someone else's head, or we go from our head trying to reach their heart. The only conversation that ever lands when it comes to betrayal or really getting through to someone is someone's heart to someone else's heart, period.
I'm being really touched and moved by this conversation. So thank you for doing this, doing the work that you do, and sharing it with the world. Tell me a little bit more. Maybe we'll switch gears just a little bit here to help me understand your business journey. So I'd love to maybe if you could share with us like some of the inflection points in your business, maybe some of the challenges you've had to overcome, perhaps some of the trials and tribulations. I'd love to unpack some of those and also learn about who are some of the influences in your life that have made a positive impact. So
yeah, it's such a great question. So I would say I've always been guided by intuition, and I've been guided by where my life was taking me at the time. So early on, when here I had 4 kids and 6 dogs and this thriving business, it was really all about holding it together. Now, here's the downside of this, because there are so many people in that stage right now. Be careful what feeds you, because I was getting so much acknowledgement and recognition for having it all together. Oh my gosh, how are you doing it all? How do you make that all work? That I was sacrificing my sleep, cutting corners, which we never cut corners when it comes to anybody else. We cut them with ourselves. And that catches up quickly. So lesson learned right there. That was one of the first lessons. And that's what had me leave sort of health in that way to move towards something that involves what stress is doing and what your lifestyle is creating as well. From there, here I was realizing that these toxic relationships were really at the root of it. And at the time, it was my family, my own family. Now, I'm one of the most family oriented people I know. I have a lot of kids. I have a big family. I love family. But it was totally toxic. And when I cut those ties, I'll never forget the founder of the program I was in. It was my mentor at the time. And she said, Debbie, when you did that, it's like you traded an anchor for a pair of wings. And I healed from everything. So I remember writing my first book. I think it was in 2007. And I wrote it in 2.5 weeks. It just flew out of me. I wanted every mom to know the secret of, I felt like I had the secret to everything, health, mindset, lifestyle, all of it. And then I was doing, and I was doing that. And then I became an FDN. And I was doing that for a while because stress was just at the root of it. And then when it was my own betrayal, really from my, again, from my family, and then from my husband, I was so used to going to books to learn my way out of something or learn something, and a book wasn't going to do it this time. So I felt like I had to enroll in this whole PhD program in transpersonal psychology, and then I did that study on betrayal, and honestly, it was just to get myself out of this jam. I needed to understand, how the mind works and why we do these things and how I could heal. And when those discoveries showed up, and you may have even been on one of these calls, I was talking all about the discoveries, but I was too uncomfortable sharing my own story. And we were on a Zoom call, and any good coach has a coach, right? So we were on a Zoom call, and we're going around, what's new with you? What's new with you? What's new with you? What's new? And so it was my turn. And I start talking about the study. Oh, the study proved this. And then our mentor at the time looks at me, points his finger, and he says, stop hiding behind your effing study already. And I was like, oh no, he's right. He's right. And I remember sitting my kids down and sitting my husband down, because now at this point we were working on reconciliation. He lost all of us, and now we were rebuilding, but from a very different place. And I said, I'm going to write this book, and the story's in there. And I thought the kids would be like, oh, come on, mom, and they were like, you know what, mom, go you. And then with my husband, I was like, this is when you see who someone really is. Because I thought for sure he'd be humiliated and embarrassed. And he just got really emotional. And he said, you're going to help so many people. So, it was in the book, and it was a slow evolution. The first TEDx talk I did two. The first one, Stop Sabotaging Yourself. That was 6 weeks after my betrayal. If you watch it, you hear me hint at it, but I wasn't ready to talk about it. And actually it was the second one, Do You Have Post-Betrayal Syndrome, where I talked about it for one of the first times. And it's just changed my life ever since.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Um, you know, before we started recording our conversation, you were telling me about how your business is evolving and you're moving into a new space. So
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk about that and share with us where the Institute's vision is headed, and where you see yourself in the next few years.
Yeah. So we've created something that truly doesn't exist, because really people come into the PBT Institute and they just move through the 5 stages. So we have a way of knowing what stage they're in. It's mostly stages 2 or stage 3. And so everything is numbered according to what stage. You see certain coaches according to what stage you're in. You go to certain classes according to what stage you're in. You do certain programs according to what stage you're in. It's just all numbered, and you just predictably move through. And then with that, we also have 2 different certification programs, one to be a certified PBT coach or practitioner, the other to be a certified support group host, because the intention is to get the right type of support to lift and inspire, wherever you are on the planet. So the support groups are popping up all over the world. The Institute we're growing in that we're certifying more coaches, having more members. And then what I realized not long ago is we have a lot of clients coming in from, they're working in these corporations and they don't feel safe and they don't trust and they're not honest with their managers or bosses, and they feel they can lose their job at any moment. And a lot of what they're feeling has to do with an unhealed betrayal from years ago. So I shared the symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome. They're going to work every day with those symptoms, or they don't trust, or they're, the turnover, the absenteeism, all of that. So we're going into corporate too, with just the idea of your people are struggling, not having anything to do with you, but it's greatly affecting your workspace. And we can help you with that.
One of the things that I'm remarking as you're speaking is how elegant of a speaker you are. And of course, you've been on many stages and done a couple of TED Talks. I'd love for you to share some of the other gifts that you feel you have that have helped you propel your business, aside from the speaking. And maybe you can tell us, did you have any formal training in speaking? I'd love to know more about that. But what are some of the other skills that you would advise practitioners to acquire, aside from, being obviously amazing clinicians, recognizing the signs of betrayal? What are some other capabilities that they should acquire along the way to help them?
Well, thank you for that. I love speaking, and I don't do nearly enough of it. And that's something I'm getting back to as well. What probably changed my speaking the most, in the very beginning, I had this idea of, I had this information I need to impart on the audience. And then I realized nobody cares about that. They just don't. What if you were to go to an amazing restaurant, if you were to read a great book, you would just want to share it, right, with whoever's going to listen, because you experienced something so great that you want someone else to experience that too. When I changed my speaking to have that in the back of my mind, I just happen to know this stuff that I just can't wait to share with the next person. It changed all of it, all of it. And my speaking just became something that I just love. And the truth is, I've spoken in pretty big audiences and smaller audiences as well. And with the bigger ones, you can only see the people in the front, the first few rows anyway. So one of my favorite parts is, let's say, that book signing at the end, or just getting to hug people at the end. And it's something that I just love doing, because a lot of times the talks are a little bit shocking, because I want to get people out of their kind of numbness. We don't change when we're in that numb state. We need to be, sometimes we need to be a little prodded. So I don't mind doing that. So, but I would say to anybody, really, when it comes to sharing your message, share it in a way that feels really good for you. If blogging feels natural and comfortable, do that. If podcasting feels great, do that. If being on stages, the world needs what you have in the very specific way you have it. But we get all tripped up in, well, that person's doing this and that person's doing that, and so then I should. And listen, I was guilty of this too. I was trying everything and realized, wait a second, when I'm doing what I do best, it's effortless and I love it. Why not just do more of that?
Yeah, and I would think you would agree with this, is we do best what we feel best about. And so it's got to make us feel good when we're doing it, so that we wake up craving to do it more. I had a conversation with one of my coaches earlier, and we were just kind of mapping out what 2024 looks like. And he asked me, kind of similar to this, in the vein of this conversation, he's like, what do you love doing the most? And I said, I love being on a stage, probably just like you, and really creating transformation for people by changing their worldview, changing their paradigm, changing the way they look at things, so that I leave them better than I found them, but also thinking in a different way, asking new questions, creating new possibilities. And he's like, well, you need to do more of that. And sometimes I'll find myself, building a website for somebody, or a landing page, or helping them craft their lead magnet, which I also enjoy doing that as well. But I realize the thing I love doing the most, and the thing I think impacts people the most, brings me the butterflies, but also the most joy, is getting in front of people and truly having that transformational conversation with them. So just like you, I'm right there with you.
And then when you even narrow it down even further. Like I realized, we know the hero's journey, right? Here's a hero walking along, just going about their business. And then there's the trauma, right? The big crash. And then there's this part where they start to do this rise. It's so interesting because I really don't have much to say to this person because they don't realize there's a problem yet. Mm-hmm. When they have that crash, my coaches are actually so much better at that than me. I'm okay with it, but that's where they're brilliant. My zone of genius is when that person starts to realize their worth, their value. The trauma starts to subside and they realize, okay, what can I do with this? That possibility, when there's a look in their eyes when they realize, wait a second, I'm going to use this trauma to my advantage. And that's trauma well served. That is just what absolutely lights me up, because that's where you'll see new levels of health, new relationships, new passion projects, new businesses, and the possibilities are endless. And it's this part right there, that climb. Huh.
The visual that's coming up for me, maybe you use this analogy before, but it's like a fire, right? So a fire can burn the house down, or it can heat it up, right? It's just containing it and using that fuel correctly can make all the difference in the world. So I love that you share that. And I love that you recognize that gift where other people, their zone of genius is perhaps getting people on the downward swing, and yours is getting people on the upward swing, so that you can do your magic and take them to a whole new level.
Yeah. That's why it takes a village.
Yeah, it sure does. So as I'm hearing you speak, I'm also hearing that you offer coaching for people to become certified in this process. And so who's a good candidate to become a coach through your institute?
Yeah, we have two tracks. One is for coaches and healers. The other is for doctors, therapists, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists. It's the same training because they're not trained in the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough. It's just a difference in the title. And if they work within the community, I pay practitioners a bit more than coaches. But it's really for that person who they're a coach, a lifestyle coach, a health coach, a mindset coach, a business coach, but they've been betrayed. Typically, that's those people make the best coaches, and they just really want to serve this niche. And so or even think about it, like how I said, 45% of everyone betrayed has a gut issue. So let's say a digestive doctor would be a perfect candidate, because as wonderful as their protocol may be, how much better and how much more effective would it be if they dealt with the root cause, which was the betrayal as well. So it's really for somebody who has either their own personal thing or their clients or patients have betrayal as a root cause, which is so often the case. And we just want to get the 5 stages into as many hands as possible.
Amazing. And we'll share a link for those interested in learning more how they could pursue this and add this on as a modality. But for those that don't, Debi, is there a place that they can refer their clients to work with your coaches?
Yeah, I mean, everything is at the PBT Institute, as in post-betrayal transformation, thepbtinstitute.com.
Okay. And I'm assuming you can work with people remotely, across borders, things like that.
We have people all over the world. Our coaches are from all over the world. We just, we have a recent coach from Dubai, one who's starting within the next few weeks from Kenya, and Canada, the US, all over, and our members are from all over the world.
Amazing. So if you had one message to share with the world and you had a chance to share it right now, what would that message be?
As it relates to betrayal, I would say this: even though it happened to you, it's not about you. Say that to yourself a million times until you believe it, because that's absolutely true. And I didn't do anything anyone else couldn't do. There's a roadmap for it. So healing has truly become a choice. As far as business goes, follow your gut. If you feel called to do something, it's because you're supposed to, and do it boldly and proudly, and don't give up ever.
Yeah. And for the 45% of you whose guts aren't working, you might need to work on the betrayal part of the equation and figure out what's holding you back, because it could very well be something like that. And this has been so enlightening, Debi. I really enjoyed our conversation today. I'm walking away feeling renewed and looking at my relationships through a whole new lens, looking at my business through a whole new lens. And I can see why you've been successfully in business for 32 years. And I only see an upward trajectory for the work that you're doing. So thank you for being such a source of inspiration for me. And I'm sure anyone who's listening to this, leave us some comments below if you're watching this on YouTube, and share how much this conversation has inspired you. And I'd love to hear what breakthroughs you have as a result of listening to this conversation. And we'll share the links, as I mentioned, in the show notes. So check them out, where you can learn more about how to find a coach to support you, but also become a coach if you're interested, and add this as a modality into your practice. So once again, thank you, Debi. Here's to an amazing year ahead. Lots of love and much gratitude in anticipation of your growth and contribution to humanity. Here's to you.
Thank you so much. You too.